Hello, everyone. Rev Brad coming to you from the Touchline. Today's podcast episode features special guest Wells Thompson. Wells was an instrumental part of the Colorado Rapids 2010 side, which won MLS Cup, and he's one of the hardest working, grittiest midfielders I've ever met. I'm excited to interview and talk to him, and I want you to hear more about what he's doing in the years since he's retired from the game. So don't go far. We get running with Wells right after this.
He's found the space, and he's found the back of the net.
Just a little off foot, thinking he's going to go far post. Not strong enough with his right hand.
Whips that one in. Far post, almost made him ends, and they have. He has the hat-trick. The second in his career. The third of the night. The hat-trick hero.
Talked about you're not going to be able to sustain that kind of pressure.
To the corner. Goes towards the near post. And you're at the angle, and what a goal! What a goal!
Well, I want to introduce a special guest and a friend of mine to you, Wells Thompson. Wells, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Brad.
Well, Wells, it's been a number of years since we were last together. It was the Colorado Rapids. You played with the club from, I think it was what? Did you join in 2010 or was it a little bit earlier? I can't remember.
It was 2010 during that magical year that we won the championship.
Yeah, and you ended up playing, what, 2-3 years with the Rapids?
Almost a full 3 years. I was traded at the end of my third year to Chicago. So I basically say 3 years.
Great. Yeah, well, Wells and I go back to 2010. Most of you know I serve as the volunteer chaplain for the Colorado Rapids, and Wells came in a trade early in 2010 to the club, and I forget. Wells, do you remember the first time that we met? To be honest, I confess I don't remember. Was it a team Bible study or a pregame prayer, or what was it?
Well, I'm a little upset that you don't remember, but not that upset because I don't remember either. I think that, though, it definitely was probably a team Bible study or a function like that.
Well, we'll have to go back into the time vault of my brain, and I'll try and remember. Maybe for a future podcast, I'll be able to bring it up and say, yeah, I remember this. I do remember that you were coming from the New England Revolution, and I think that one of the ministry guys that was working with the team, one of the athletes in action guys, had told me, hey, you've got Wells Thompson come to your team, and he's this fantastic guy. I spent quite a bit of time with him, and I do remember that part of it, but I just don't remember that first time that we met and spent some time together, although I've got plenty of great memories and stories and pictures from your time here in Colorado. So, oh, man, I feel like I'm trying to dig out of a hole. But, Wells, maybe we can get running into this podcast interview a little bit more and get past this first part. So, Wells, you've actually played soccer for a long time. You've got football running through your veins. So let's talk a little bit about your background and your past. And first, maybe start off sharing a little bit about where you grew up and when did you start playing soccer? How did you get into the game?
I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I started playing soccer when I was about 4 years old. I have an older brother. I have a younger sister too, but an older brother that's like a year and a half older than me and was a really good athlete. And so he started playing soccer before I did, and I just kind of followed in his footsteps. As a kid, actually, I grew up playing basically every sport you can imagine. Ice hockey, believe it or not, being from North Carolina, baseball, basketball, golf, you kind of name it, I played it. But soccer was my true passion and probably the sport that I was best at. So I ended up, the older I got, the more I had to kind of prioritize my time, and soccer remained.
So if soccer wasn't your sport, like what would be your second sport? Like if you had to play a second sport, like what's your favorite? What's your go-to? What do you enjoy most?
It was baseball. I loved playing ice hockey. And if you watch a little bit of me play soccer, you probably see a little bit of hockey player in me. But it was probably my
wait, how is that? Is that just like knocking guys over, or is that just like trying to be first or something, or what do you mean by if you watch ice hockey you'll see a little bit of something in me?
I'm a gritty, aggressive player. I'm not one to shy away from a challenge, and so that's what I mean by that. And I love the physical aspect of hockey. I'm a physical guy in general, and I like to engage and that sort of thing. And that is probably one of the things I miss most about leaving the game is the real world is definitely overrated. And so oftentimes when I'm sitting in the office for several hours, I just want to be out on the nice green grass tackling somebody or scoring a goal. But, if I had to say my backup sport was definitely baseball. I was a very good baseball player. I probably got more accolades in baseball or more recognized in baseball than did in soccer as a little kid. I played on baseball AAU teams. My dad would always say, though, that I picked soccer because baseball was too slow for me. And I definitely probably agree with that.
What position did you play in baseball? As a kid, I played all over. I mean, I pitched, I caught a little bit, second base, shortstop, even outfield. I could really kind of play anywhere. Didn't play first or third. But I think versatility was probably a strength of mine in soccer as well. And so served me well there in baseball too. Okay. So baseball being too slow and soccer, hockey's a fast sport as well. So I can see perhaps some of your enjoyment there. So tell me, do you have any claims to fame in terms of speed in soccer or speed in any, in the sport or I don't know. Tell me what that's like. I know sometimes guys they used to compare their 40-yard dash speeds, but do you have anything like that where you're like, yeah, I'm fast, or I enjoy the game because is there anything for you in that way?
You definitely say that I'm fast. I was always like the fastest kid growing up, or one of the fastest kids growing up. And I think that's probably, why I excelled. It's interesting, I have kids now. I've got a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and I'm just getting them into soccer, right, and to sports, and I want them to play. And, so you try to kind of flesh this stuff out because I can't remember when I was 4 and 5 years old. And so, I've been asking my parents, like, did you know that I was a good player at that age and those sorts of things. And, they tell me that they could tell from a real young age that God had blessed me with natural gifts and abilities, and especially in soccer. And so I think and speed was a part of that. I was just always kind of a fast kid, and that strength definitely gets neutralized the farther up you climb the ladder in terms of the levels that you go to. Omar Cummings probably beat me in a sprint, but I don't know about right now, but he
probably,
yeah, probably. I'm not gonna, and so quickness and fast, and I was definitely fast, but I was also very quick. And, so there's different kinds of fast. There's like 100-mile fast, and there's like 40-yard fast.
True. Yeah.
but
that's a good point.
No claim to fame and speed.
Well, you know what? Maybe one of the celebration points we can do as the Rapids are going to honor the 2010 group again this year on the 10-year anniversary of winning the Cup is we will have a foot race between you and Omar now. How about that?
Okay.
I'll call up Omar. We'll get it on the table, and we'll just go, hey, length of the field right before kickoff of the game that the Rapids do their celebration around. You and Omar. We'll see who's fastest now after the game. How's that sound?
I'd prefer a B test. But
okay.
We could try that.
We could arrange that. I bet we can arrange a beat test between you and Omar. I'd be curious to see who wins that. So, Wells, on Wikipedia, if anybody goes and looks up Wells Thompson, you are listed as a midfielder. So, tell me, baseball is one of those sports, and as a kid, you end up playing kind of multiple different positions. But when did you kind of land and settle into the midfield? And what position, did you find in the midfield that you really enjoyed playing? Was, for those that are knowledgeable about soccer, maybe if you could tell us, what number you were. That guys understand that part of the side of the game. So where'd you end up in the midfield, and how did you end up there? Like, was there a coach that saw that in you? Like, how did that come to be? If you're not familiar with soccer, midfield is the middle, so you're between the defenders and the attackers. So you do a lot of the running, but you're kind of the middle layer there. I think growing up, I was fast, so I played a lot of forward. And then I think generally, like in youth soccer, the best player plays kind of in the center of the midfield. Or one of the best players. And so that's where I played the majority of my youth career, was at the center midfield. Then when I went to college, like 10 or?
Yeah, sure. 10. Yeah, sure. Anywhere kind of in there. And, when I went to college, I was moved out wide and I hated it. It was, very different. So I played on the flank. So you don't have as much freedom. You're constrained by the sideline, and you're basically stay on one side of the field. And it was a very difficult transition for me. I learned to kind of accept it and adapt and excel there. But I've always preferred the center of the field. I think there's, you're around the action more. You're probably getting on the ball a little bit more. And, who doesn't want that?
Yeah, for sure. Was there a particular side that you ended up playing in college? Did you play right or left? I mean, how did that work out for you?
Yeah, I'm predominantly right-footed. So I like to play on the left side because I could cut in with my right. That's kind of what Messi does. He plays on the right. He's left-footed but plays on the right, so he can cut in with his left. In college, I really enjoyed playing on the left side. When I got to the pros, especially with New England, they were a little bit more like drive to the end line and cross it in. And I'm a little bit strong on my right, so probably would have preferred to be on my right. But anyway, I learned to adapt and get better with my left foot. So
okay,
I'm ambidextrous, amphibious.
Amphibious and ambidextrous. That's awesome. Oh, well, so 2006, college you played for, Wake Forest Demon Deacons. You guys end up third in the nation, and if I read right, you led the team in goals. Is that right?
I did, yeah.
How many goals did you have that year?
I think I had 7.
Ooh, magic number. Well, tell us more about that year. Was that your senior year? Was that kind of like a highlight year for you? What was 2006?
Yeah, that was my junior year. I wasn't expected to really play much at Wake Forest at all. I walked onto the team. It was kind of like a recruiter walk-on. Ended up playing a bunch my freshman year, kind of struggled a little bit my sophomore year. And then kind of my breakout season was my junior year. I scored 7 goals then as well. But I think it was just probably gaining a lot of confidence, getting more comfortable. I think that you play your play rises to the level of the players that you're playing with. And so, for example, like if you're in high school and you're watching a college team practice, you're probably like, man, those guys are good. It's hard to see myself playing with them. But when you get there, they're so much better. They make you better. And so I was just, Wake Forest has a truly incredible soccer family environment and atmosphere. And I just, a lot of players, not just me, but a lot of players thrive there. And so I'm thankful and fortunate that I was able to have that experience.
Yeah. And did you play all 4 years then at Wake?
I did. I played all 4 years. I ended up doing a lot of summer school and graduating in 3.5 years because the draft's in January. So I ended up leaving after the fall season, which is basically the counting season for men's soccer in college, and in preparation for the draft.
Sure. And it was New England that drafted you, right? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So at Wake Forest, so I'm already an underdog, right? Coming into Wake Forest. Wake Forest perennially is the top 5 in the country. So they're like a powerhouse, right? So they're recruiting Gatorade National Player of the Year, 2-time All-Americans, and here I am, just this local kid. I grew up like 5 minutes from campus, so I knew the coaches, and it's kind of a thing that, when I actually got drafted, they told me that they thought I would never play a day at Wake Forest. And so I told them, thanks for the confidence. No, kidding. But that was just kind of that was the expectation of me, right? And I just came in and I rose, I beat their expectations, right? And so I didn't even know, like I had a good college career, right? But I was not an All-American. I wasn't a 2-time All-American. And so I wasn't really sure what was going to happen or if I was going to get drafted. And 2 days before the draft, my college coach, Davidovich, called me in his office and said, "Hey, Wells, you need to fly it to Indianapolis because that was where the draft was that year. You're going to get picked." And I was like, "Really?" And so me and my mom and my dad, we flew up kind of on our own dime. And, if you're going to get picked in the first round, then we'll also fly you up and take care of you and those sorts of things. And, come draft time, they have a section in the room cordoned off for the players and their family. And my dad gets a seat on the front row. And I'm like, "Dad, what are you doing, man? Like, I'm going to be the kid that kind of sits there and then gets picked, And
was Dad just being super eager, or what was going on there?
He was, who knows? He was excited to be there, and he wanted to get a front row seat. I can't blame him. I mean, I probably would do the same thing. But I was up there with my best friend, Ryan Solly, who we played at Wake together, and he was a 2-time All-American. He was a midfielder as well. And so I knew that the New England Revolution, who had the 11th pick, liked me and were possibly going to draft me. Well, about 30 minutes before the draft started, New England trades their pick to the 5th pick. And so, the previous picks of New England are Michael Parkhurst and Clint Dempsey, a couple no names, No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
A couple great, great players. And so I'm like, there's just no way they're going to pick me. Well, come 5th pick, they ended up saying from Wake Forest, midfielder. And my friend Ryan Solly tells me after the draft that he starts to stand up because he thinks they're going to call his name. And they call my name. And, it's kind of surreal from that point on, but I try not to trip walking up to shake the commissioner's hand. And oddly enough, Ryan Solly got drafted by New England in the next round or their next pick or something like that. So we were able to play together and kind of laugh about it after it. But yeah, man,
wow.
Dream come true. Never thought it was going to happen, but it did. And I'm thankful.
Wow. So you end up being first pick, but you actually flew up on your own dime. Did MLS reimburse you, or no? I'm just kidding.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, they were saving money back then. Wow, what a story. So totally unexpected, totally out of the blue. Indianapolis. I'm trying to remember if I was there in 2007. I go to many at the drafts when they used to have it in the different cities. So. But again, the vault of Rev's head is like locked tight from 2010 on, and so I've got to dig back into some notes there. So 2007 January, you get drafted, and then what? You end up doing preseason with New England.
Yeah, I end up going and to do a preseason with New England, and it was a different a position for me to be in. I was always kind of this underdog kid and underappreciated and undervalued. I felt so anyway. Maybe it wasn't that way on the outside, but to a certain extent it was. And here I am, kind of this number 1 draft pick. And just trying to really kind of wrap my head around what's going on and enjoy it as much as possible. New England had great teams at this time. So like Taylor Twellman, Steve Ralston, Matt Reese, like they had been to the MLS Cup the past 2 years, had lost. And we actually ended up having a really good year. We won the U.S. Open Cup that year. It was the first trophy that New England ever won. And then we made it to MLS finals, but ended up losing to the Houston Dynamo. So it was a really cool rookie season.
Who was your goalkeeper that year in 2007?
Matt Reese.
Do you remember? It was Reese. Okay. So I remember we had a goalkeeper, Aiden Brown, who went from Colorado to New England, I think. And I think he played in one of the cup finals for New England, but maybe that was previous year. Yeah. Wow. So 2007, unexpected. Your buddy's standing up to get drafted because he thinks he's all that, and it's actually you. You end up going. What was it like being in New England? Just, I mean, you're kind of. Was this first time away from home? Was this first time? I mean, away from everything you'd known and grown up, or what was it? Was it like that? What was it like for you?
It wasn't the first time away from home. I spent a year and a half in high school. I was kind of a troubled kid, so I got sent away to upstate New York for a little bit. But it was definitely different from being in the South, I'll tell you that. And if anybody knows me, they know that I'm going to smile and I'm going to wave at you and say, hey, if we pass and that sort of thing. And, it's a little bit different up there. I guess people are a little bit more to themselves. And so it was a difficult transition. It was definitely colder and different environment. I think adjusting to the pro game was difficult. I mean, right, there's a lot of transitions going on. So
yeah.
I grew up in Winston-Salem. I play college soccer in Winston-Salem, and then all in the South, and then I'm going to the North. And some of the stereotypes are true, right? Obviously, some of them aren't, but because I met some awesome people, and it's an awesome area. I think that one of the greatest blessings that God has given me, and I've realized this the older I've gotten from soccer, is just the fact that it's taken me all over the world, and it's introduced me to people from all over the world. I think that. It's one of the greatest things that we can do as humans is to travel to see this big world that God's created and how different it is, and it just kind of exposes you to different things and challenges your beliefs. And so I came to know Jesus my junior year in college, and when I got drafted, I knew that was my platform to kind of share Jesus and to loving other people. And so I always kid about this, but I was the typical Christian athlete. Like, it didn't matter what question the reporter asked me. Everything was Jesus, my Lord and Savior. So I kind of kid, like, Wells, what are you going to eat for dinner tonight? Jesus is my Lord and Savior. And then I realized that, like, it was okay to say pizza, or I'm going to eat a salad, or that sort of thing. And so, I gained a little bit of maturity, but that made the adjustment that much harder. People in the South, everyone says they love Jesus, and, going to church means you love Jesus. And, up north, people keep that to themselves a little bit more. So I'll never forget in our very first interview, it was a get to know Wells Thompson, and I talked about Jesus, and the team media kind of relations person at the time told me after the story was printed that I shouldn't talk like that. Because people up here wouldn't like me.
Oh, wow.
And, and I remember that being like it was actually a very pivotal point in my life, because here I am, like, if you love Jesus in the South, most of the people are going to like you and, like, encourage you in that. And so, but it was, looking back, it was the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me, because it made me make my faith my own. And, I just couldn't rely on Sunday school answers or what mom and daddy taught me. So I really had to ask the tough questions.
Sure. Wow. What a difference. And too, you've kind of hinted at the cultural differences. I think that's one of the things that's unique about soccer and football here in the United States is that just you have so many different parts of the country where the game is played now, and you see some of those cultural differences, even between north and south or east and west, and it's interesting to see you, as you said, your career kind of took you around and has taken you around through different levels of soccer here in the U.S. You've played for MLS teams and lower division teams. So beyond, some of what you've already talked about, are there some other favorite memories or times that you have just from playing soccer throughout the U.S.? What are some of your favorite moments?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so I played 7 years in the MLS, and then I was going to retire and kind of walk away from the game, and God called me back, and so I ended up playing 2 years in the lower leagues. I've won a U.S. Open Cup, MLS Cup, a Superliga with New England, and, been a part of some pretty special things, right? And so, but when I think about, or when I get asked this sort of question, what comes to mind are the people that I met and the relationships that I've established. I'll never forget you always want more, right? Like, so I remember when I got drafted, I thought this would like satisfy everything in me. And then when I won the U.S. Open Cup, ended up scoring the game-winning goal, like I would think like, this is it, right? This is everything I've worked for. And nothing just kind of really satisfies you. So, what I really take away from my career is the traveling, is meeting people, is, the relationships I've established, like, with you, Brad, and the people I've met along the way. I think that at the end of the day is what truly matters, and kind of what comes to mind, when people ask that question. I mean, that doesn't downplay, like, going to Seattle and playing in front of 75,000 people is like spectacular, right? Winning MLS Cup and going to the White House and meeting with the president is spectacular. Those are all really cool things, and I'm so thankful that I experienced them. But like the lasting things are the relationships and the people.
Sure. Yeah, those. I was just talking to my wife and my kids the other day, just about, as we went through some pictures during this time of quarantine. We've kind of been going through some old photographs and on the computer, and it's fun to see all the different folks that have been part of our life because of the gift God's given to us in being able to do the chaplaincy with the Rapids and others throughout pro soccer throughout the world. And you're right, it's the people, it's the memories that you share with them, it's the challenges and adversity you go through, and it's also the celebrations you go through. In fact, it was funny. I met someone who was kind of new to the idea of chaplaincy in football, and they're like, "Oh, I guess you chaplains are just around for the bad stuff." And I kind of, didn't want to say too much. I kind of nodded, kind of agreed. Yeah, you're right. We're here for the bad stuff, but walked away thinking, no, actually, there's been a lot of good stuff that I've been able to be part of and been blessed to be part of. It's the weddings, it's the birth of a child, it's the MLS Cups and the other points too. And that's kind of the gift that I think God's given. We even dug up some pictures, Wells, of having you guys over for some pumpkin carving at the house. And my older daughter now, she's like, "Dad, can you just call the guys and just say, I'm sorry?" Like, because she's looking at these pictures of her as a little kid, like hanging on you guys or running around with you guys. She gets a little embarrassed, but I was like, "Girl, don't worry about it. We were a family back then. We brought everybody in because you were so far from family, and we just made you guys our own family." So that's part of our favorite memories and times too, because as you said, you get to meet so many unique and different people from around the world,
and we share the gift of fellowship and friendship with each other. It's really a beautiful thing. It really is. It really is. Well, Wells, I know I've been around football, soccer long enough to know it's not all glitz and glam. It's not all glory. But what were some of the harder times and things that you had to go through? I mean, I kind of imagine too. I mean, you're kind of in the earlier days of MLS. Salaries are kind of have climbed up now. You've played for some lower division teams too, which I know sometimes that's a real grind because you're not flying everywhere, you're busing everywhere, or there's different nuances. But what were some of the things that were harder for you to go through? Was it being traded? Was it moving at different points and not really having control? What were some of those harder things for you as you went through your career that you had to go through?
Yeah, I mean, I think that life is, and pro sports is not, is no different. Like it's a bunch of ups and downs, right? And I don't know much, and I've headed a lot of soccer balls, but I do know that we all go through challenges, and we're all in challenges, or we're just all coming out of different things. But certainly, there's a few things that come to mind. Being traded was difficult for sure. I mean, I was being traded from Colorado is especially difficult. We were actually I was playing on the Colorado, and we had a game out in Chicago, and I played, and then I remember being on the bus and being like, I would never want to be traded here. I'd never want to play here. And I was traded the next week. And so I had to go, and then I was in the locker room of the guys that I just competed against and was, rubbing shoulders with. And that was difficult. And then you're taking someone's position. I think of, there's so much that goes into getting to this sort of level. There's hopes and there's dreams. And so I think part of it is seeing other people's dreams being crushed, whether it's through injuries, whether it's, your friends being cut, your own injuries, right? Like, I think the greatest challenge that I faced and still face is finding my identity in my performance. And so as an athlete, that's very easy to do because that's how you're judged. That's how you're evaluated. I mean, you can lose your job if you don't practice well, right? So you have to make sure that, and that's kind of what makes you, what helps you get to that level, right? Is that you play hard and you play well and you try to do it as consistently as possible. And so there were certainly times in my career when I wasn't playing. And so that was just so hard for me. And, looking back now, the regret is the hard part because now you wish you, instead of pouted and, succumb to self-pity, that you would use that to, and no doubt there were times that I did use that to motivate and inspire me to work harder, but I wasn't able to enjoy it as much because I was so focused on what wasn't happening for me versus just, enjoying being there. And again, it's that fine line of being motivated and hungry versus being content. And, but it's a difficult world. And then, retiring, I know most people don't retire right on their own terms. I certainly didn't. I had some injuries. I was back in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is where I live now. My wife has a company here. And so my plan was to kind of play for 5-6, as long as, I could play. I'd really fallen back in love with the game. I felt like I was as good as I'd ever been. And, they don't take care of you quite as well in the lower leagues. I mean, one thing I will say about the MLS is, like, you get an injury, you're taken care of. I never had an issue. I'm sure some guys have, but it's not the same way in the lower leagues. Maybe it is today. I don't know. But, I just had a hip injury. I was having kids, and, there comes a point where you just have to, kind of ask yourselves, is it worth it? And me and my wife had these discussions, and I feel like it was just time for me to kind of move on to what was next. And that, I read something this week actually about Lindsey Vonn talking about retiring from pro skiing, and she related it to a death, that you have to mourn. And I mourned hard for the first 3 years, and I think I'm in my 4th or 5th year now. And, I would probably say now that I will probably mourn soccer for the rest of my life because, I'm at this point where I am now, I can look back and be more thankful, but it was extremely difficult, that transition out of it.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you being open and vulnerable with that. I think that so many times we don't realize, especially for athletes at elite levels, you've spent so much of your life in and around the game, fine-tuning yourself, sharpening yourself, working hard, performing, and carrying all the balance that you just talked about. How do you balance identity and performance and identity and other things? And then you come to this point where, like you said, you retire, and most of us in our professional lives, we won't retire until we're much older, and we have maturity and tools and maybe even a heartfelt readiness to retire. We face retirement, and even some of the folks that I know that are retired and they've been executives and CEOs, they come back to me and they go, Rev, I need purpose. I need something to do. I just can't sit around all day and drink coffee and play golf. And so they're looking for purpose and intentionality, and they want to use their gifts and their maturity and their seasonedness to help others. And they feel like they've been sidelined by their age or sidelined by the world's gone up and gotten all technological on them. And so, but here you are at, what age did you retire? What was it? 31, which is actually about average, or maybe a little bit above average for a pro football player today in the world. But here you are at 30, 31, or even younger, some guys, and you're forced to, as you said, face this death, this loss, this death of a dream, this death of a career or at least a passion and a certain level of executing and living out that passion. And, for me as a chaplain, that's been one of the challenges is how do we equip people? How do we have good conversations around that time when the R word comes up? And that is, as you said, Wells, that's a challenging time. And, it certainly is really difficult if you don't have all the support around you that you could. And you've had a lot of support throughout your life and throughout your career, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I've got my family is awesome, always been there for me. And, I think that too, Brad, and I don't know if I realized it at the time, but just your presence and having you there, in the midst of that. I mean, I think that, I would say that you're probably one of the guys that spiritually has been the most impactful in my life. And I wouldn't have said it at the time. I don't know if I would have realized it at the time. And, hindsight's 20/20, right? And I think that that's the hard part about, you talk about the R word, retirement, is that you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know that when you retire, you're going to question who you are and have no idea who you are without this one constant in your life anymore, right? So I joke about it too. Is I use my platform to go to churches and I would share my story and just try to encourage and inspire people. And one of the things that I would try to do is encourage them that they aren't what they do, they aren't who they aren't their job, and you shouldn't put your identity in anything that can be taken away from you, right? And I laugh about it now because I had no idea at the time that my identity was firmly planted in soccer. And so that was a true shock for me when I retired, just realizing I was like, holy cow, I don't have this one thing that I've had in my life since 4 years old. Well, who the heck am I? And so I think in order to transition well from, even college athletics, but definitely pro sports is to start while you're playing, and the sooner the better. because it is hard. And I often say these days, I was a one-trick pony, and that was soccer. And I rode that pony till it died, and I tried to revive it a couple of times. It just wouldn't get up. But it's important to have outside interests and to find out what you're passionate about and to learn and to grow and to, take school seriously. And because I'm going to spend the majority of my life, like I have hopefully, God willing, a lot of life left to live, and that life isn't going to be playing soccer. But I lived my whole life like I would play soccer for the rest of my life.
Well, that's man. I'm taking some notes here as we've gone along, and I'm like, oh, we need to talk about that. Oh, we need to talk about that. And I feel like we're just going to have you back on the podcast for sure, because you have so much you can share out of your own story, because you've been there and you've gone through these things. And one of the things I think that you've said and kind of touched on is the very fact that sometimes we need to understand that we have to have the longer play in view, right? I mean, as a midfielder, right, you run a lot, right? How many miles do you think you ran in the course of your 20 years playing the game? Have you ever tried to figure that out?
No, that I haven't. It'd be a lot.
That would be an interesting calculation, but I mean, on average, how many miles do you think you ran in a game? I've heard different averages kind of thrown out there, but for a midfielder, what's a typical during the course of a game? How much do you run?
I don't know. What do they say, like 7 to 11 or something like that?
Yeah, I've heard midfielders it's up that high. I've heard maybe a 10 who doesn't move too much is still moving about 5 miles in a game, but I mean that's a lot. And when you think about that over the course of 90 minutes, it's not all at one pace. I mean, that's the beauty of running today. Like if you're a distance runner or a marathoner or ultra, you learn to pace out for the long view, right? I imagine as a football player too, you've got to conserve energy. You've got to know when to sprint, when to jog back, when to make your moves. And really what you're talking about here is having a framework for life so that you can be involved in the long run, not just in a short sprint and an all out, flat out, foot race with Omar Cummings. You really have to be equipped to have some of those tools for the longer race. And that's really a challenge. What I'm hearing you say, Wells, is that true?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that comes to mind is equating working hard versus working smart. And I think that, especially as a young kid, I mean, you can relate this to anything you do in life, right? Like getting out into the business world, you try to work as hard as you can, right? So you're just putting so many hours in. And then for pro athletes, the older you get, the more you really kind of have to be aware of your body, take care of your body, make sure, you're not doing unnecessary things, because you could just be working too hard, right? And you need to slow it down a little bit and take some more time off, and then your body will be more efficient that way. And so, I think that can be just related to life in general. Like, do we put thought into what we're going to do the rest of our lives as a pro athlete, or do we just focus on the here and now? And I think that there's some myths around like retirement and focusing on other things. I think that pro athletes are kind of encouraged to put every single thing that they have. And I think the dialogue's changing a little bit now. I mean, you see a lot of like the Steph Currys, the Kevin Durant, Andre Iguodala's, like a lot of pro athletes are, Amobi, Pugos, like there's some guys that come to mind that are trying to say that we're more than just athletes, right? Like,
right.
We're not just an athlete. There's more to us. And so I think that the more that we as pro athletes can see ourselves that way, the more that we don't identify and pigeonhole ourselves just as pro athletes, the better off that we're going to be. Because really, at the end of the day, one of the struggles I found when I retired was, employers wanted to know what kind of tangible experience I had. And I didn't really have any. And so there's a lot of intangible things that correlate to the business world, right? I mean, you think about it, teamwork, dedication, sacrifice, the drive to go after a long-term goal. I mean, all these things, right, can correlate to the real world. And I think that it's important for us, though, to understand how they translate and to I don't know, even almost do the work to figure that out, to flesh that out, because I was left with, my idea when I retired was that people would, press release would go out, people would line up at my doorstep and start bidding for my services, because what was reiterated over and over again to me, repeated to me from other people, was that everybody loves to hire pro athletes. And although that might be true, I just didn't find that to be true for me in my experience. And so that was difficult, right? You're at the top of your game in one kind of sphere industry, and then you expect when you translate to the real world that you would kind of start out where you were in the other industry, right? Or the other sphere.
Yeah.
And,
that's a common story for so many pro athletes, because they expect to be excellent and elite at the next thing that they do. In fact, a friend of mine who was a pro NFL player said the same thing. He invested a lot of money into a company, and he, start up, and they were going gangbusters in the beginning, but then lost everything because he just kept working hard and going, I think the success I had on the field, I should have that in this next industry. And it took some courageous people to tell him, hey, you need to stop because you're not being successful. And that can be some of the most hurtful, hard things for someone who has worked at a professionally elite level to hear at some point. And I think that's a huge challenge. I know so many of the athletes that I would speak to, I would ask them, I would say, what are your plans for the next chapter? What are your plans for when soccer's finished? And so many would come back to me and go, Rev, I don't even think that way because I can't. If I think that way for a minute, it will detract from who I am on the field now today. And so many guys wrestle with that challenge. And as you said, that myth, and that's really difficult. And I think you are seeing more athletes today that are diversifying themselves. They're creating a brand. They're getting involved and invested into other businesses, other programs, so that there are options for them when they complete and finish the game. And I've seen some guys do that real well, even in the lower divisions of soccer, that they've not necessarily been an MLS player, but they've learned, look, when I go to a different city, a different team, I'm going to network. I'm going to get to know people. I'm going to build relationships. And those things, in the end, could end up being part of the next chapter, the next thing that they end up doing. So Wells, tell me, what are you up to today? What are the things that you're doing since retirement?
Yeah, I tried to do a little bit of coaching. I started my own business, Wells Thompson Soccer, in 2011, and so I did camps and stuff like in my off season. And I tried to continue that when I retired from the sport, but I really needed to kind of get away from soccer and find out who I was. And so I walked away from the game and I took a sales job, and I did that for 3 years. And I traveled and left my family, and I was like, I don't want to do that. Like I said, I have 3 kids, and I didn't want to sacrifice my time with them to chase any sort of worldly success. And I'm a dreamer. I'm a visionary. I'm a kind of go big or go home type guy. And I just started learning about the opportunity to buy businesses. Okay. And so currently right now, there's a lot of baby boomers looking to retire, 10,000 a day, actually, according to the Wall Street Journal. And so what I'm trying to do is carry on the legacy of someone that's ready to retire, someone that's spent their whole life into a business and cares about their legacy and cares about their employees. And when I came to know Jesus, I knew that soccer was my platform. And when I got out into the business world, I saw a big separation of faith and work. And the more that I kind of dove into that and wrestled with it, what I came to believe is that outside of your immediate family,
I believe that work is the greatest opportunity to impact lives and to love on other people and impact his kingdom. And so my goals and visions right now, and I think that, I'm still fleshing it out, but I would love to team with like-minded individuals that want to take their faith to the workplace and just love on people. And so I'm looking for businesses to buy. It's a lot harder than it sounds. It probably sounds hard to you. It sounded easy to me, and but I've not found it to be easy. It's definitely a process. Another thing that I'm into is I've tried to fill, like, basically, if you think about it, I got paid for a living to work out. And so I've tried to fill that void and fill that competitive void. And so I got into CrossFit, did like some Krav Maga for a little bit. And what I've really found that I enjoy is ultra running. So ultra running basically is anything greater than a marathon. And they're usually done on single track trails in the mountains. Wow. And so, I got into a 50K, which is 32 miles, and a 50 miler. And then I did a 100K, which is 62 miles. And next weekend, I'm actually going to run for 24 hours straight, hopefully over 100 miles.
Wait, back up the bus. 24 hours, Wells. Are you kidding?
Yes. Yeah, 24 hours. Basically, think about like running and walking with a buffet. So you have to make sure that you're fueling enough and eating enough food. So
the picture that comes to my mind is Forrest Gump with a box of pizza in his hand, and he's taking a slice out, eating as he runs. Is it?
Yeah, no,
that's what you're doing.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So
wow.
because of COVID, we can't have a race where people come race with us. So we're doing somewhat of a virtual race. So I've teamed with Hydrating Humanity, which is a local nonprofit that provides clean drinking water, hygiene education, and hope to the people of East Africa. And so I'm going to run to raise funds for them. I think also, too, I want to encourage and inspire people. COVID has brought a lot of destruction and death and fear. And I want to, give people hope. And, it's easy to want to curl up in a ball and say, I can't do this. I'm helpless. But we can continue to give back. We just have to get creative in what that looks like, so we're inviting people to run and donate with us. And I'm sure you've seen them in your life, Brad, but, personal examples or seen them in the media of people doing things differently to try to bless and give back to other people. And so, we're resilient people. And one thing I love about ultra running is that I actually don't really love to run. Like, I do like to run, but not for like 24 hours, right? Or not for like 10 hours. What I love is getting out of my comfort zone and pushing past my limits. And, but I didn't even know about ultra running before I retired. I thought marathon, that was kind of it. That's as far as you ever want to go. and then you learn about this whole kind of subculture. And so you talk to people that don't know about ultra running, and they're like, wow, that's not good for you. That's horrible for you. And, my thing is maybe it's horrible for me, for my body, but it's so good for my soul. I don't know how to explain it, but it makes me a better man. It draws me closer to God. It does something to me that is inexplainable. And so I'm kind of hooked, and I'm excited now that I get to run for a cause that's bigger than myself, to provide, a daily necessity, clean drinking water, something that we all, especially in this country, probably, or I know I do myself, take for granted. And,
Sure.
And to be able to provide that for people in East Africa. I mean, at the end of the day, there are so many good things. There are so many awesome organizations out there that are doing so many incredible things. And I just want to encourage people to give and to support them during the process.
Yeah. Well, Wells, for sure, we will get the links and the notations into the podcast for those of you that maybe are interested in supporting Wells as he runs for 24 hours for clean water.
We'll have some in the liner notes. We'll have some links to Hydrating Humanity and the 24-hour run for clean water. We'll have some links to that. Wells, that's coming up this weekend, isn't it? May 15th through 16th, 24 hours you're running. And we can be donating, we can be praying, or people can participate too. They can run, walk, or bike for a portion of that 24 hours. Is that right?
Yeah, so if you go to run4cleanwater.com, you can support me and donate, per mile. You can join the race with us, and we encourage people to do that, whether it's they have a Fitbit, they can take pictures of how far they run and donate whatever they want per mile that they run, or they can just do a one-time donation.
Okay.
So run for clean water.
So, Wells, as you mentioned that, I had this image of The Office, right? And I was just thinking it's per mile, so folks just be careful. I could just imagine some of us getting that confused and being like, "Oh yeah, $25. Yeah, $25 a mile. That's how many miles do you think you're going to be doing in this?"
My goal is 100 miles.
100 miles. Okay, sweet. Hey, while you're talking about ultras, I just have to share this story. Sorry, I'm digressing here a little bit here on this podcast, but there's a thing in Colorado. I think you should come out and do it. And if you do, bring the family. We'd love to have them. We'll sit around while you're doing it. But it's called the Leadville 100, and it's an ultra at altitude. And so people are running in the middle of the night in this race course, 100 miles, the Leadville 100 at altitude. You're up at I think it's 12,000 feet, somewhere around there. You should look it up. But what's funny is my family and I were camping a few years ago, and the Leadville 100 was going on. Well, my wife and the kids are walking, and they're like, "Oh, look at all these glow sticks out here. Why are they just out here?" And they ended up taking some of them because they're like, "Oh, this will be great for the kids tonight." They're still kind of working, and sure enough, in the middle of the night, we hear people crashing through the woods, going off course. And I'm just shaking my head "Wife, you have just taken the glow sticks off the course markers for the Leadville 100. We are going to get in so much trouble." And our kids are playing with them in the tent. So anyway, if you come out and do the Leadville 100, we'll camp out with you and your family, and we'll cheer you on for the 5 minutes that we watch you run by maybe, and it would be great to have you and the family back here, Wells.
No, that's legit, man. I would love to do that. There's men and women that do that. I think you have to qualify for that or something. Or there's
you might. And I don't know. Do you know Sam Cronin really well?
I do. Yeah, he grew up in Winston as well. He played at Wake with me, and he's actually back in Raleigh now.
Yeah, I think one of his brothers does some ultra marathoning as well. So we need to make sure you guys are connected, and maybe you guys can form a race team. The Winston-Salem, I don't know, something, Demon Deacons. I don't know. We'll think of something that reflects where you guys are. Well, hey, Wells, today I want to close it out. I want to pray a blessing over you as you go on this run that you're about to take on. And I want to pray a blessing for the other quote-unquote runners that are out there. And whether you're running as an elite-level athlete or performer, or you're running for the fun of it, or you're running to stay in some form of fitness during our global pandemic, this blessing is just for you. And it's original in the sense that it's a compilation. There are many places in the Bible where running's referred to as a metaphor for life and for more. And I'll link to some of the verses that comprise the lines of this blessing in the episode notes. So as you listen, perhaps just join me in spirit as I pray over Wells and over you and others who are quote-unquote runners. Lord, we know that in a typical race, runners run for a prize. We run on the pitch for position or to be the first to a ball. We run to recover on defense. We run to beat the offside trap and score the goal. We run not aimlessly, but with purpose. Lord, in life, help us to run in the right ways. Help us to make good runs that are healthy and beneficial for you and for your kingdom, for our neighbor, whether they be friend or foe, and even for ourselves. Help us to run and not chase the foolish things of the world. Help us to run and not to stumble, even though the footing is slippery or complicated. Help us to run with perseverance, the full course that you've marked out for us. May we rise up on wings of eagles. May we run and not grow tired. And even if we slow to a walk, may we not be faint. But help us to cross the finish lines of life. Help us to complete our runs. Help us to run good races with perseverance, not getting cut off or cut down. May we have swiftness of foot, strength of heart, and clearness of thought and direction as we run after you. Amen. Well, this is Red Brad and
Wells Thompson running with you from the touchline.